guests and dear friends. I want to talk about 2 or 3 issues. I wasn't very sure what kind of audience and what is it that I should address. So I sort of picked up 2 or 3 points which are related but different. I think what one is perhaps expecting from such a conference is the role of technology. And on that count, want to briefly say about our experiences and actually then move on to more central issues. So at IIIT Hyderabad, we have a whole range of technologies in use in teaching learning. Many of the lectures are recorded. There's a lot of material which is put on the net within the course. Students and faculty are generally quite net savvy. They go out and browse and get the material. And the bandwidth problem is there. No matter how much you provide, it falls short. So we have to understand what role technology will play and what role it will not play. So technology makes information available, but in-depth learning, in-depth gaining of a deeper understanding, and that is what higher education is about. It's not about skill development alone. Skill development is only a part. But developing the ability to analyze, developing creativity, we all have it within us, but the goal is to develop it, where we can relate different situations, different scenarios, and bring them together. Whether they are technology scenarios or social scenarios, I actually don't make much difference, although technology scenarios are simpler to handle. So the technology makes many of these things easier, but actually it's a small part of the puzzle or small part of the overall task. So I was attending this Microsoft academic summit in Redmond, where they had some 100 professors from US universities and also people from outside. And there was this presentation on the Microsoft University of Washington link, where they are located some, I believe, from what I remember, it's about 20 kilometers or 20 miles, maybe 30 kilometers. And the lectures which are in the university are made available to Microsoft researchers or workers, and there is a lot of content that gets created. That experience showed, and that is what this some 3 years old, that the unreliability of the technology made some of the lectures useless. In other words, when the lecture is going on and it is breaking every 20 minutes, not that frequent, that's it. That's the end of the lecture. So you get focused on the technology but defocused on the learning. So technology plays a role, but it's a smaller role. We have to understand that. So what is the larger role? What is the larger elements in education? And I sort of picked up 2 elements which I will talk about. The first element is the richness of the learning experience that we can provide. And that richness, I didn't say teaching, I said learning. And the learning takes place when students solve problems, when any learner solves problems. So lectures, textbooks, all the things that technology can offer, so-called at the turning on of the tap, they are only a small part. They are only enablers. But it is the engagement with the material when you apply it and solve problems. That is when real learning takes place. So, it's like saying, when I hear, I forget. when I see, I remember. But when I solve a problem, I understand. I think that is the goal of education. And what we need to do in our education is to make learning more problem solving oriented, and problems not just artificial problems, although they also play a role in learning, in graded learning, but eventually learning to solve real life problems. So that aspect has to be built into the learning and learning teaching processes. And one way to do it is to also introduce a lot of project work, term papers, where students look at new problems which are perhaps less structured. They are not part of routine home assigned problems, but they are more open-ended, unstructured problems. So one can graduate from problem solving with respect to fairly well-defined, narrow, artificial problems to making it more natural and more real-life problems. And as you reach real-life problems, you find that the subject boundaries actually don't matter. The real problem requires putting together of knowledge from different subjects or different disciplines. So one aspect of education would be to develop this. And one can then see what role technology can play. And it turns out that the role technology can play is actually very different. It is not in the usual classroom learning experience that we think of technology, in terms of technology, but it is in putting people together and in trying to look at common but difficult problems, and through that learning takes place. So I thought I'll mention this. The second part I want to mention actually is a larger issue. The learner has to be interested in learning. What is the attitude towards learning? What is the motivation? And there has been so much talk about, on one hand, we want the learning to be related to life, but there is so much talk of skill development in university or in the top colleges and top institutions, that the education is for a job. And that message has gone very strongly in our students. So in a 4-year computer science program, most industry needs actually just 4 courses out of that 4 years. It's a very sad commentary on our industry also. So the students, they think, if I'm in computer science, I need to learn 4 courses and rest of the courses I don't need. Why? Because industry doesn't need it. Now that's the state of industry today. And the so-called IT industry which is in the country. And I know that industry is trying on its part, but it needs to do more. It needs to move up into design. It needs to move up into more creative aspects of the job. And that will create a link up with education. So one way is, if industry doesn't need it, then don't teach it. Right? That is the goal of the skill development. Why are you teaching things which are not needed today? But there is this other thing, that for future, when we give education, we are not looking at the first job. We are looking at a first as well as the last job. Developing the ability to learn, creativity, analytical ability, etc. So all those are part of education. And those things take place through all the courses and all the material that is covered. It is not through, there is no separate course on analytical thinking. All the courses are doing it. There is no separate course on creativity. All the courses are doing it. Introductory courses may be of one kind, later courses may be of another kind. But these are all the skills that are, or I shouldn't call them skills, but these are things that need to be developed. But at the base of it, actually is the issue about how do we view education and how do our students view education. To me, education is a much larger enterprise. It is not just about skill development. And by that, even physics is skill development, right? Engineering is skill development, but in a broader sense. But the larger question is, what is our society? What is my role in the society? What is my role in family? And as we move towards a globalized world, what is my role in the entire globe? And the Indian thinking has always been viewing the entire world as one. And the globalization has reduced it to only economic part, which is should be a smaller part. Actually, the larger part of globalization is globalization of thought, where we are able to understand each other, interact with each other, and work for the welfare of each other. I think that part of the globalization is missing or gone so low we don't see it. But education is actually about that. Education was always about globalization of the humankind, where we think of everybody together. So we have in IIIT put in a whole lot of emphasis on human values. So research on one hand, creativity, analytical ability. On the other hand, human values. How do we relate to our society? How do we relate to our own family? How do we relate to other colleagues? How do we relate to other students? And all of those things. So I think those parts must become part of education. And that will bring about, there will be many natural outcomes of it. There is no need to talk of professional ethics anymore. They'll just come out of it. Human ethics will come out of it. Ethics are sort of do's and don'ts. You don't talk at do's and don'ts, but at the level of what do we want? What is the human goal in some sense? So education and higher education must relate to this very wide spectrum. And I thought I'll just touch on 2 points, knowing that the time is short and issues are many. Thank you.